All right.
Turn it down a little bit. It's going into the red.
Like that? What desktop audio? I don't need desktop audio.
Desktop audio is the sounds that your computer makes.
Yeah, right. Okay, so I hope this makes some sound. Yes, no, no, yes. Hello. And this may take a bit of time, by the way, but I didn't set up the super fast broadcasting.
Now, catching up now.
Okay, cool. Make some sound or make some noise.
Make some noise.
Noise.
Put your hands up.
Yeah.
How many free days did you take? I'm not sure about 3 days.
Okay.
You work on like ECF or some other
And I keep my PC over there. We still have some pizza. Please eat up. Somebody, volunteer, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, please.
No meat.
No. All right, so thanks for coming today. It's 47th? Or I don't know the number. So it's the 2019 September Meetup, and we have 2 speakers today, Jim and me, and please enjoy. And because YouTube just changing the way to broadcasting, or I don't know if they stop using what was the name, Hangout?
Yeah.
And now we're using the new system, so I hope it's working well today. And just see, I don't know. Alright, so the first speaker will be Jim Borden. And I stopped my broadcast, and could you start doing that? Could you project the screen? Which one you need?
Yeah. Luckily, mine is on the other side. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Can you see it? Error occurred.
I'm going to sign it.
You break it already. Did you do it on purpose? No. Come on.
Yeah, I can see the screen.
Oh, okay, good. There. Right. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me? I wonder. Oh, no. Not you guys. The internet. I want to know if the internet can hear me. How will they reply? They won't. You'll have to sit on here. You break it already. All right. The internet can hear me. It's confirmed. All right. Hello.
Hello.
My name is Jim, and as you may have guessed by my fabulous shirt, I work in Couchbase, where we have no equal. Well, we're no SQL vendor, so we have no equal. That's our new brand. I didn't make it, so don't blame me. But I work on the .NET mobile product, and a lot of people are surprised to hear that I say .NET and mobile in the same sentence, because until a few years ago, .NET has been the Windows-only development environment. But here I am, developing for 6 different platforms and using .NET. And so I've been quite interested in .NET Core a bit recently because it makes things easier than before to bring .NET to multiple platforms, desktop platforms that is. Windows, Mac, and some flavors of Linux. And there's a new version now, which is in Preview 9. It's .NET Core 3. So today I'm going to talk about .NET Core 3, some of the things it's going to bring to the table, including C# 8, which has its own sort of section here that I go into what C# 8 is going to bring to the table. And then when I'm done with that, I'm going to tell you what's coming after .NET Core 3. What comes after 3? You'd think it would be 4, but it's not. It's .NET 5. Because, well, the same reason that they skipped Windows 9. Because .NET Framework already has a version 4 for like a decade now. So they got tired of that number. They're using .NET 5. So the next .NET Core is .NET 5. The next .NET Framework is .NET 5. Everything is .NET 5 in the future. But more on that later. For now, we're going to talk about C# 8. And here is a sort of comment of the table of contents of C# 8. These are all the features that I found on the documentation from Microsoft. You have read-only members, default interface members, extended pattern matching, new using statements, static local functions, disposable refs, structs, nullable reference types, asynchronous streams, range indices, null coalescing assignment, and unmanaged constructed types. And yeah, I'm sure you have no idea what any of that means. So for each one of these, I've created a little side program. So we'll start with the first one on the list. That's read-only members. So that'll be, where did I put it? Read-only members is here. So if you are using C# 7.3, the latest minor version right now, you'll know that we have a new concept in C# called a read-only struct. I have not done a lot of experimenting with this feature of C#, but it allows C# to do a lot of nice optimizations regarding memory and not copying things so much. But it's kind of like, blunt. So what they did in C# 8 is Microsoft added the ability to make not only structs read-only, but stuff inside them read-only on a method or property basis. So this is sort of like, if you've used C++ before, you'll know that you have const methods, which guarantees that it doesn't modify the state of a given object. And that is pretty much what this is for C#. So you note here, read-only toString, toString usually doesn't modify anything inside of the struct. So why don't I just go ahead and make that read-only? I can add that here, and that is all fine. But oh wait, what is this? I have a warning now. It's going to tell me inside my read-only method, I have made a call to a not read-only property, distance. Well, that's simple enough to fix in this case. I'll just make this property read-only too, because it's also read-only. Then that warning goes away. So this helps optimize a lot of things and lets the caller know what's going to happen to this object if you call this method. Is it going to mess with some internal state, or is it just what we call a pure function? So I'll pack that out now because I want to move to the next topic. Default interface members. This is a very interesting one that
Before going further, I have a question for the read-only. Is that a read-only method or read-only what?
Read-only, it's a read-only. The question was, is that a read-only method or read-only what? Read-only method, read-only pretty much anything. Read-only property, read-only method. We already have read-only fields. Now, this is pretty much just methods, and properties are just sort of hidden methods that are made by the compiler. So these are read-only methods. Read-only doesn't really have that much meaning inside of a constructor or anything because you're just making it, so of course you're modifying it. There's no such thing as a read-only constructor in any language. Default interface members is a really interesting one because let's go through this example over here where I have this put together. I have a customer interface, and it has sort of like stuff like previous orders, date joined, the last order, name, reminders, and stuff like that. And yeah, it has the list of orders. The orders has like when it was purchased and what it cost. I have an implementation of it, and I have an implementation of order. But so now, what has been the remedy before when we wanted to add a method to an interface? Because that's a breaking change. Everyone has to then implement that method in all of their classes now. So Microsoft's clever approach to this in the past has been to make another interface with the same name with just the number 2 on the end, or the number 3. Just to, like make versions of it, and 2 inherits from the original, and 3 inherits from 2, and so on and so forth. But what you can do now is, for example, go back up to this original interface, drop down into here, put this in, and well, I didn't spend a lot of time making this actually work, but the theory is here that I've added a new field, a new method here called compute loyalty discount. And I've also added in this default loyalty discount. I think I didn't read into this a whole lot, but I think it has to be a static method that you pass in this too. But what's going to happen now is that when you make this change and you push it out, every class that's implemented this interface is going to get this default implementation of this new method. And if you want, oh, I know what I've done. I've copied too much. There. That looks a little bit better. This is probably just complaining that I didn't include link. So if I just add that in, it'll go away. There. So now I have this wonderful default method, but say that I'm not satisfied with it. I'll go down to my sample customer. I'll add in this. And if I don't have any previous, I really hate it when people do this. I copied and pasted this directly from the Microsoft examples, but this makes me so angry when people say equal equal false. Because if it's not C#, this is not a good thing to do, because it's not guaranteed to be false. False is usually just a definition for 1. And the definition of false is not 0. So anything that's between like 2 and 255 will not satisfy this condition. So don't do it, or you will make me burst a blood vessel in my eye. But so if there's none, then just return 0.5. But then otherwise you can actually just call into the default implementation just by calling it like this. So it's really powerful for backwards compatibility. Back to the.
So where are these previous orders coming from?
Previous orders is already in the previous definition of the, was already a part of the previous definition of the interface here.
All right. So when you're viewing the new model, you can have the previous orders already.
Yeah, this everything except for everything below, up above this line, was part of the original definition. So the original implementation will have all of this already. And that's where this is coming from in the compute loyalty discount. The default loyalty discount is going to consider in the previous property that was on the original definition. Well, and the current definition, because it's still there. You can even start like this if you want to. It'll be less effort to implement an interface. You could start it out with default implementations and just override the ones that you don't feel satisfied with. The next thing, extended pattern matching. This is a really, really fun one because we got like sort of dipped our feet into pattern matching in C#7. We've gone like all over the deep end in like crazy pattern matching territory in C#8. So we have a whole bunch of examples in here. So I've made some enums like rainbow colors and quadrants on a geometry chart, and RGB color class, and an address with just a state in it because I was lazy. But here's our first kind of simple example of pattern matching. So here's the old way of doing it. Everyone should be familiar with this, switch on color band. If it's this, do that. If it's that, do that. If it's that, do that. Well, this is the sort of syntactic improvements that Microsoft likes to make now in the releases of this becomes this. So instead of, you have this first, so it stands right out there like this is what we're working with, color band switch instead of switch color band. To me, it's sort of inconsequential, but whatever. And then instead of each case, we can just sort of put them out like this. And then we'll have the default one with just this underscore. It's very, very like F-sharp derived looking with the whole underbar means like whatever. It means that anything that wasn't up here, I'm going to do this. I'm going to throw a new argument exception. And the compiler is going to be more strict with you now about its warnings for when you don't cover every case. Because now it's the default behavior, if you don't cover the case, is not to fall through anymore. The default behavior is now to throw an exception. So if you don't cover the case, you get an exception. So the compiler is really going to make sure, okay, are you sure this is what you want? And we can do a property patterns. So like I said before, I made an address with just a state on it. So I'm switching on the address, and I want to say, oh, if its state is Washington, then return this. If its state is Minnesota, then return this, and blah, 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 blah. And the default is 0. Yes, default, no sales tax, like Delaware. I went to school in Philadelphia, which is really close to Delaware. And when we wanted to buy a computer or something expensive, we would drive to Delaware to buy it because there's no sales tax. Pro tip. Get tuple patterns. So I pass in the string first and the string second. I combine them together into a tuple. I switch on that. If the first is Brock and the second is paper, then I return that. It's a blah, blah, blah. You can see how this goes, right? And then everything else is a tie. I don't care, that's a tie. And even positional. I don't know why exactly they call this positional, but this is an interesting one because you're switching on the point. But, so when the point is 0, 0, this is a struct. So it's just going to go on the fields in order. This is just an X and a Y. Then return origin. And then you can do like XY, 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 but put clauses on them. So when X is greater than 0 and Y is greater than 0, return quadrant 1. When X is less than 0 and Y is greater than 0, return them quadrant 2, and so on and so forth. And then for everything else, I don't care, it's on the border. And in the example actually that I copied from the documentation, it had this line in it, but actually if I comment it out, if I put it back in, it doesn't actually compile. So I think it's left over from, see, it's unhappy because it says this pattern has already been handled by the previous arm. So, okay, whatever, I'll just take it out then. If it thinks I've already done it, then sure.
When you have like band guards, it cannot be exhaustive pattern matching.
What?
When you have these band guards, like these band things, even F-sharp will fail this.
Oh, so
someone don't forget about the file check.
Right. So someone in the live audience here told me that when you have these when guards, then you don't get to use this one anymore. So that's good to know. One of these days. The rainbow one?
If you pass the rainbow already, does the exception would it get to that?
I'm not sure if it would or not. I think this exception is more demonstrative than anything. But let's say I didn't want Violet, I could take it out and then Violet wouldn't be allowed for whatever reason. Maybe I don't know the hex code because I'm dumb. So I left it out instead of doing the responsible thing and looking it up. But in this case, I think if you left it out, that it would throw the default exception, which is I didn't actually check what it was. But I wonder if the compiler will warn me. If I take out one more. There we go. The switch expression does not handle all possible inputs. It is not exhaustive. Good. But I guess we were just overly careful here. Maybe this is kind of future proofing though, right? So if you add another rainbow color for some reason, then you forget to update your switch case and you're covered. Yeah. That's probably why that's there. So next one is really tiny, but it's one of my favorite ones. I've been waiting for something like this, and I didn't even know it, really. We all use using statements. We use them all the time, right? So they look like this, right? Using blah, 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 and then you wrap everything in a big brace, and everything's indented, and you feel like a dork for having like 5 layers of indents in your function. Now you can declare a scoped using like this, and this will get disposed at the end of the function. That's going to be awesome for stuff that has multiple returns inside, and stuff like early returns, stuff like that. Just declare this file when this function exits, that gets disposed. Great. Very small change, but very big impact for me. Well, nested using is really just yeah, if you declare something that's using the file as another using. I would assume so, because that's really no different than doing it like with 2 lines in a row of the traditional. So that's a quick one. The next one, static local function. This is one I don't have any experience in. I've actually never used local functions, but now I can see the appeal of this for people that do use local functions. Static local function. So this is what a local function looks like. This local function is inside of another function, and it gets called in here. It's basically like a different form of a lambda that's more descriptive, I suppose, is what to say. But when you make this, you get a copy of the entire scope here, and sometimes if you do it enough, and you've really like hammered down performance in other places, this can start affecting your performance or your memory usage for making all these copies all the time. So instead, what you can do is you can now make static local functions, and this will not copy the scope. It will only use the inputs that you give it. So in this case, it will only use left and right. So that means obviously this one can't be static. If I try to make it static, then it's going to complain about me that I can't use y because y is not passed into it by argument. Disposable ref structs. This one feels like a hack to me that I assume some people are going to find necessary. So I have a definition over here of a ref struct called dispose me. I'm going to try to use it inside of a using statement, and it's going to complain about me. And notice how this message has changed since the previous version of C#. Type used in a using statement must be implicitly convertible to system.idisposable. Before, it would just stop here. Now it says, or implement a suitable dispose method. Oh, that's interesting. There's a problem with this. Why is my function key on the other side of the keyboard? Ref structs can't actually implement interfaces. It's not allowed. So if I try to do that, first of all, it's going to tell me that it doesn't implement the interface, which is funny because it can't anyway. But it's also going to tell me that ref structs cannot implement interfaces. So well, there goes that idea. But Microsoft got the sort of semantic-based idea that all I have to do is create a public void dispose, and then I'm golden to use it inside of this dispose method, this using clause. So some nice semantic-based hacking there to make the dreams of the disposable ref struct come true.
Just wondering if this is for dispose, or I don't know if this is a hidden interface implementation.
It definitely is a hidden interface implementation, but I would think that they would want to avoid it as much as possible, but enough people were complaining about the fact that they couldn't dispose their ref structs that they admitted this one only. I don't think we'll see any more of them unless there's huge demand. Okay, so back up here. Nullable reference types. This could probably have an entire new talk of its own. Has anybody used Swift, the programming language Swift? It had this before C# did, and I'm not sure if F# has it or not. But
It doesn't like most, I'm pretty sure it doesn't.
okay.
And it just uses basically all the things.
Yeah, it doesn't apparently, but let's go over here, nullable reference type. So let's say I don't have this constructor here. And this is an opt-in feature, by the way. You have to opt into this. The GA version is going to automatically opt you in if you create a new project. The preview version does not. And if you have an old project, you have to do it in one of several ways. I chose to do it on a file basis, which means I put nullable enable here at the top. Because the thing about it is it's going to change the meaning of your existing code. So unless you have a way to opt in, you're going to get some really unexpected results or a giant boatload of compiler warnings when you try to compile your new project. This is doing what ReSharper has been doing for us traditionally, and it is tracking down our null reference exceptions. So see, I have a string question text here, and already it has a warning. It says non-nullable property question text is uninitialized. That means that I put something that I don't want to be null here. Now, if you put a reference type into somewhere, it's going to not allow you to store null in it. Unless, like the nullable type itself, you put the question mark after it, and then it's happy. Question mark means I allow null here. No question mark, no null allowed. And it's going to warn you that you probably are going to have null here in some cases because you didn't exhaustively cover all the possibilities where you would take care of it not being null. Now let's say I put it in here. This is still not great. This is still, you can still pass in null here, but it won't warn you here. It'll actually warn you somewhere else. I don't know why I put this. I don't think it's relevant. Yes, here. Question type is not a reference type. Question type is an enum. You can tell that by the fact that it's yellow, but that's hard to see. So non-reference types are as they were. They can't be null anyway, so yeah. You'll never get null just by virtue of them being the way they are.
Is this a new feature?
This is a new feature of C# 8. The feature you're thinking of is the null like shortcut out feature where you do the question mark before the dot accessor, and then if it's null, then it'll just shortcut and return null.
No, because the string is nullable anyway, right?
Yeah, no, you're trying to make it non-nullable.
They're defaulting to non-nullable.
Yeah, they're defaulting.
The new feature.
The new.
Mislabel.
Okay. Okay, I understand that.
Yeah, that is kind of a weird name for it, nullable. Like, I guess they argued forever about what to call it. I watched it happen. I'm like, guys, stop arguing about the name and just do it because I want it. But if you put like up here, RQ equals I have it in Japanese somewhere. There. Equals new survey question. Sorry, I'm typing on an American keyboard with Japanese layout. I should probably just change it. I have a Japanese external keyboard that I plug in at home. Question type dot, let's just say it's text. I will put in the default for string. That's going to be a null string, but notice that it complains at me. Cannot convert null literal to non-nullable reference type. Great. Null reference exception avoided. And it's even smart enough to do this. So let's say I can't do this. Anyway, I also put nullable enable at the top of this file, by the way. You have to do it for every file, or you have to do it in your project. So I chose to go by file because I just wanted to do it on the files that I use it in. But let's say I do string text equals null. It's going to yell at me again. Converting null literal or possible null value to non-nullable type. Great, it saved me again. Let's make this a nullable type then. That'll take care of this problem. And let's pass it into here. Stop it. There. Oh, nope. That won't work either because possible null reference argument for parameter text because this is not a non-nullable type. It might be null. He doesn't know. But sometimes people are afraid. They think the compiler is too smart. They think they know better. So for that case, you have the exclamation point string really not null equals text exclamation point. So I told the compiler this is not null. I'll pass this into here, and it will be all happy. Even though it's wrong, but I had to really, really try to make it wrong. So that's good. I only wish that it was a compiler error instead of a warning, but I think you can probably configure that. Because I would go after all of those errors so fast, because that's like over half of what was wrong anyway. Exclamation, I forgot what it's called. It's got some really funny name. I call it the null ignore operator. It says that I'm sure this is for cases where you think the compiler's made a mistake. So it says, I'm sure this is really not null ever. I've checked, it's not null, I'm sure.
And I think this coming from TypeScript.
Also, Swift has the exact same syntax. What? Oh, sorry. All right, so that's nullable reference types. Next is asynchronous strings, which I think is really cool too. This is maybe my second favorite one after the using statement. Async strings. So this is a pretty simple one. Now you can actually return a new interface, thanks to .NET Core 3, called iAsync enumerable, which now lets you asynchronously do a kind of for each loop. So let's see, I have this generate sequence. It's going to do something asynchronously, which takes some time, and then it's going to yield. Great. Network calls, I/O, all that neat stuff that you need to do. Like say that you're even like listing the files in a directory. Like anything over 100 milliseconds, Microsoft would prefer that you do asynchronously. It's a great way to do it. I bet even probably the .NET framework is going to change the definition or add a new definition for enumerating file entries to be iAsync enumerable. I imagine that they would do that. And then when you go to enumerate it, you will do await for each now instead of just for each. And you've got yourself a nice asynchronous for each loop. What would be even better is you can do an asynchronous parallel for each loop. And then you'll get lost forever. So this is also another cool one, ranges and indices. And other languages have had this, like Python. I don't like trackpads. I always press the wrong spot. Where did I put it? Ranges, indices. So here we have a list of words. The quick brown fox jumped out with a lazy dog. And for anyone who doesn't know, that sentence uses every letter in the alphabet. Fun fact. So you see that, as you know, the index from the start is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But now we also have some what do you call it? Ways to index starting at the end instead of starting at the beginning. So if I were to put caret 9, that would give me, that's the ninth one from the end. So caret 0 is actually the end. So caret 1 is the last entry. This is so think of this as this caret as length minus. Also, so if you wrote console.writeLine, the last word is word 1, it's going to tell you the last word is dog. Words caret 1 is dog. And then if you want to have a range, you can put the dot dot syntax. So 1 dot dot 4 means give me entries 1 through 4. And it'll give you quick, brown, and fox. It does not include the last one. The last one is not inclusive. It's like for I equals 1, I less than 4. Think of it that way. It's not going to include the last one. So if you put caret 2 and caret 0, it's going to have lazy dog. Well, backwards, I guess. I'm not sure actually which order it comes in. Didn't actually look at it. Then you could just say, if you want to have all words, I don't know why you would want to do this other than the fact that you can pass in this dot dot syntax as an actual separate variable. But this will give you all the all the words, just the regular dot dot. Or you can leave out the first one, all the words through 4, or all the words starting at 6. I guess the reason for this, allowing this, is because you can actually set this 1 dot dot 4 to be its own variable of a range struct, a read-only struct even. And then you can pass it in just like this, words phrase. So this is something I've long liked about scripting languages like Python and probably Ruby. Now it's here. Like all my wildest dreams are just coming to me. I just have to wait.
And I agree with this also coming from the machine learning demand.
Machine learning demand is coming from apparently. Null coalescing assignment. This is just a shortcut that I've been waiting for. This is really just a tiny feature, but I like it a lot. Null coalescing assignment operator. So just this one, the double question mark equal means that if numbers is null, send it to this. Great. I've always thought it was hideous looking to say numbers equals numbers, question mark, new list. And you can even pass it in like this. Add I if I is not if I is null, then set it to 17 and add it. You have to be careful with this kind of stuff because side effects and all that, it can get hard to read. But I like the inclusion of this operator. This, well, see how it's null up here?
Yeah, but
You can, but this will also assign it. So I will be 17 after this line. So this will add 17 twice, actually. So it's just another thing. See, this is exactly why I'm worried about going a little bit too far in this direction, because you're starting to get unclear about what you're actually doing here. Like, what's the goal of this syntax? I like this one. This line 14, that's great. This one, you know, I could take it or leave it. I'll allow it if it lets me have this one. That's my stance on it. And the last is unmanaged constructed types. This is really a niche one. And I like it a lot because I work a lot with unmanaged types, even though I've never actually used unmanaged, like the unmanaged keyword. Because now you can have a generic. This is not new to C# 8, but you can say T can only be unmanaged types. That means like value types or pointers or arrays of such. But before, you wouldn't have. You can use the size of operator on these unmanaged types, and it'll give you the native size underlying, like the same as if you called it in C or C++. But it wouldn't let you do that with types of this. Now, if the type is generic and it only contains unmanaged types as a generic type, if I put in like string here, it won't work anymore. See, it's going to tell me that it won't allow it because size of only works on unmanaged types. But if a type only contains unmanaged types, then it can also work. And that now in C# 8 includes generic types, which only have unmanaged types inside as well. So that is all of the C# 8 features that I've found in the documentation for that I got from Microsoft's website. And I'm going to move on now to .NET Core 3 features. These are not all of the features. So if you find the What's New .NET Core 3 docs entry, you can find a lot more than this. But I chose both some that are interesting and some that are really quick to talk about. So the first thing you need to know about .NET Core 3 is that you can only use it in Visual Studio 2019. It's not compatible with 2017. You have to get 2019 to use it. So actually, I downloaded 2019 here just to try .NET Core 3. Then you have to enable it inside of 2019, inside of the options of Visual Studio, and restart it. Then you can use it. And then every time you build it, it's going to say, you're using a preview version. Yes. Well, I'm thankful that it does that so I don't forget. But another thing that it talks about is the new versioning for the SDK. I'm going to go over here to the, I was downloading OBS today. C#8, this is the C# 8 page that I took all the examples from. And this is .NET Core 3. So the new versioning here is feature bands are defined in the hundreds group in the patch section. So if you get 30101 and 30201, those are two different feature bands. I'm not quite sure what a feature band is. I suppose they're working on the set of features and only in 101 to 199 is the same feature band. They'll only be fixing stuff. And then when you go to 201, you get a new feature. And the installer will remove the previous feature band if you upgrade to a newer feature band in the same feature band. And I assume that feature bands can exist side by side. Yeah. .NET Core 30200 is installed, 101 won't be removed. So, and then C# 8 preview, of course, and that's what we just spent this time going over. .NET Standard 2.1 is here. So, I talked about .NET Standard before. I don't know where it's going in the future now that we have .NET 5, but a little bit more on that later. Platform-dependent intrinsics. This is a really interesting one for me, who does a lot of platform-specific stuff. Let's see, where did I put it here? Platform intrinsics allows you to have a class dedicated to stuff like SSE 4.2. So if you want to use SSE 4.2 features to speed up your program, you can query the static is supported class, they supported Boolean, and let's say you want to do a CRC32. SSE 4.2 actually has a CRC32 definition, so you can use one assembly instruction to do your CRC32 instead of the maybe handful of instructions that it takes to do it in a managed implementation. But if it's not, you can fall back to your managed implementation. There's a whole lot of stuff in here, and to do this, you use the system.runtime.intrinsic. This one is for x86. So if you're on ARM, you'll be using the system runtime intrinsics.arm version of it, SSE 4.2. Well, SSE 4.2 is not a thing on ARM, so obviously you won't be using it there. But if there were some other kind of instruct Neon, for example, you'd be using it via these system runtime intrinsic namespace areas. C# is really banking on its ability to compete with C++. So default executables. Ever noticed when you build a .NET Core app, you actually get a DLL out in the end and you have to actually go and find out, and it's probably not in your path on Windows, so you have to actually type the full path or make an alias in PowerShell, which I recommend doing, just to run it. But now, by default, you'll get an executable that you can run directly from the folder, an exe file. That's good. And not only that, let's go through this journey here of assembly linking these new features here. So not here, it's in repos. Where did I, oh, right, just did Meetup September. And I'll open up a PowerShell prompt here. And I'll just run blockmap publish configuration release to start out with. Let's see what we get. Just take this journey. See, there it is. You're using a preview version of .NET Core, reminding me that I shouldn't be relying on it, even though Microsoft says that Preview 9 is okay for production. Yeah. So we can use it in production, and they'll support it. So I built it now. Go into the release, and let's see what we got here in the .NET Core App 3 folder in publish. Oh, not so much. Great. It's really tiny, right? Well, that's because this actually depends on the .NET Core runtime being installed on the machine. Well, not desirable for a lot of my coworkers. I'd love for them to install the .NET runtime on their machine, but they won't because they don't want to deal with it. So, as you can see right there in the middle, meetup.september.exe is an application instead of just a regular DLL one. And that happens not just for the publish, happens here too in the build time. I think you can override it if you really don't want an executable for whatever reason, but I do. Let's open another PowerShell prompt here just to show you that you can just run it here. Meetup.exe. This is another feature that that is in my list that I haven't gotten to yet, but notice if you call environment.version, you get 3.0.0. If you call runtime framework description, you get .NET Core 3. Finally, an actual description, an actual real version number. Until now, it's been .NET Core 4.6, which means nothing. Now you get the actual version that you're using. Go .NET Core 3, the small steps. But enough of that. Let's get rid of this publish folder. Let's start going down the path towards not needing the .NET Core runtime at all. Next step, add in the framework identifier, Windows 10 x64. Oh, right, it's not -F, that's framework, -R for runtime. There we go. Went into the same folder, which is why I deleted it. Oh, I didn't actually, sorry. It goes into this folder. And, oh my god! Look at this mess. Crying out loud. Look at all these files we have. This has been bothering me ever since the beginning of .NET Core. It copies the entire world into here. Let's see how big it is. 66.3 megabytes. Just to write hello world. Unacceptable. You cannot. Because I published it for Windows 10. You can build a Linux version on here, but this is not it. It just requires changing the Windows 10 on here to be Linux x64 or something like that. But let's add a new property in here. This started out as a NuGet project from the Mono team, but it's been fully integrated into .NET Core 3 as part of their build chain. And what it does is it goes through at link time and finds out what you're using and what you're not using. It dumps all the stuff that you're not using. Publish trimmed. Oh, wait. Sorry. Publish trimmed equals true. But you have to be careful with this. If you're using reflection or stuff, it's going to pull out the stuff from under you. The documentation tells you how to deal with that. So don't worry. You can account for that. But oh, sorry, I have to do it again because I forgot to delete the publish folder. It's still gonna have all the old stuff in it. Let's clear it anyway. Let's check the size. 25.4 megabytes. I added one property and I got it down to a third of its size. Still really big for hello world. I think that we can do better. I haven't figured out how quite well. I think there are a few more things to do better. I'm not going to necessarily do better on this time, but there is one more thing that I want to show you, which I like. There was still a whole bunch of files in there actually, but I'll add one more property. And these are properties you can add to your CS project file too. I'm just adding them here to show them more easily. Publish single file. Let's see what I have now. Oh my goodness, everything's been wrapped up into one executable for me. I love it. Much better than the 1,000 files I had in there before. Let's just make sure it works still. Meetup September.exe. Yay. Still 25 megabytes, but there are a few more of these properties you can add in that will possibly cut this down. And I think you can probably maybe get rid of some of your default references that you don't use, stuff like that. So here's a big one for people. I'm not going to actually show this, but you know how you create a new .NET Core project on the command line, .NET new console, .NET new whatever. Now you can type .NET new WPF or .NET new WinForms. And you can use WPF and Windows Forms to build a graphical application on Windows, okay? Don't get excited, it doesn't work on Mac or Linux. I saw somebody at Microsoft was developing like a GTK backend for getting graphical applications for Xamarin Forms, but I don't know what happened to that. I assume they just got excited about it and then just figured out that it was a pain in the ass and stopped doing it. Because I haven't heard anything about it in months. I wish it were a thing. That'd be cool, but this is still cool, I guess. I mean, if you're going to use WPF and limit yourself to Windows, why not just use regular .NET framework? Let's see where it goes from there. Maybe they're planning something else, and this is the starting point. It could be. New JSON support. They added a new system text JSON. They're trying to compete with the most downloaded NuGet package of all time, JSON.NET. But now you don't need a dependency anymore. They have a comparably fast system.text.json namespace, and inside you have a JSON DOM class that you can use to sort of iterate over all the stuff inside. You have a parser. I don't know if we call it a parser or a lexer, but it spits out the as you go. That's a lexer, isn't it? Yeah. So spits out the pieces as you go. There's a stream reader, a stream writer for JSON. Just cool. And then some other miscellaneous things. HTTP client now has HTTP2 support. Really cool. HTTP2 is going to be really awesome once it's fully in swing. TLS 1.3 support on all platforms, including Linux via OpenSSL 1.1.1. And ARM64 support for Linux. And a whole bunch of other stuff, including one that I really liked but I didn't bring up because I felt that it was only exciting for me. You can go to the search for .NET Core 3 Microsoft Docs and you'll find the same page that I was on here. Then, of course, what comes after 3? 5. Duh. Let's count. So, .NET 5, there actually has not been a whole lot of information released other than this sort of one blog post. But what it's claiming here is that after .NET Core 3, in November of 2020, .NET 5 will come and sort of render .NET standard kind of irrelevant, I guess. I mean, it's still in here, and this layer of the sandwich, but not sure what good it does. Since you're going to target .NET 5, it's going to run everywhere. It's going to be great. I was just up here last year telling you how .NET Standard is the future, and now it's this little part of the sandwich in the middle, and it's going to be relegated to like .NET 5, I suppose. But they've actually released a schedule of this. Really just, they're merging more and more of .NET Core, .NET Framework, Xamarin, Mono into sort of just one conglomerate that will take care of everything for you. No more separate projects, no more, well, I guess you'll still have the ifdefs, but it'll all be in one project instead of several. And it'll still be open source and everything. Java, oh, this is a nice one. Java interoperability will be available on all platforms. Objective-C and Swift interoperability will be supported on multiple operating systems, even though I don't know what other operating systems Swift and Objective-C run on besides Apple stuff. CoreFX extended, and then here's the entire schedule for the next like 5 years. .NET Core 3, 3.1, .NET 5, .NET 6, .NET 7, .NET 8, and the even numbers are long-term support, and the odd numbers are, I don't know, BS. No, just kidding. Skipping version 4 because it's confusing. No. Runtime experiences. There's a lot of information on here about it, but this is going to be a real cool advance in the way that .NET works. So it started out in the beginning as one runtime that targeted basically one operating system. Now it's presented to you as one runtime that works everywhere. It's basically turning into what Java should have been. And it will be awesome. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope you're now all experts on C#, .NET Core 3, and you have interest in .NET Core 5, or sorry, .NET 5. The end. Does it look like WPF and Windows Forms will run on other platforms? I really would not imagine that Windows Forms will run on other platforms. It's really just a one-to-one line up with the Win32 drawing API. But WPF, I don't know either, because that's really, I mean, it's really a really thin shell around the graphics APIs of Windows. So I have a hard time imagining that WPF itself will go cross-platform. If anything, I think Xamarin Forms would.
And there is really the other side of the fair depends. So I don't think it's just UI. All right, so let's take a 5 minutes break, and we shall resume the session from 8:30.
We need an intermission screen here.
Yeah. So could you try to stop?
I guess that's fine. I didn't think of to ask that question, but it seems like it might be able to. I don't know if it only kind of true everything. Yeah. I don't know if they limited it to just reference, just ref structs, or if they allow you to do it everywhere. But I would hope they would try to limit it so you don't try to be evil like that. You have an entry on the feature set. It's meant for ref structs that can't do implementation. They're prohibited from implementing.
No, but I mean that it's holding methods. If I extend from my disposable, implement my empty disposable, and then any other class that extend from that implement that interface when it is possible without doing anything.
Yeah, that's supposed to call the environment exit. But usually this code is pretty specific. But you know what you could do? You could implement the unmanaged disposable, have the default interface just call them as a virtual. You know that pattern that everyone does when they have unmanaged resources where they have the disposable tool and they call it true when it's being called from dispose and they call it false when it's being called from the finalizer. If you could set that up to be default, that would be great. Because I have a separate interface just for doing that. But I had to have a first layer of class implementing that sort of pattern. But with the default interface implementation, all I have to do is have like the unmanaged disposable language set up that pattern. It seals our dispose so nobody can actually override that. And then that dispose calls the virtual dispose, which is a rule, and the finalizer. Like a finalizer even. That's the only drawback. It still needs a class in that case. That'd be cool.
I don't quite like it.
Don't like what?
The default method for
They don't use it.
No. Other people use their own default method. Yeah, I would make it.
No. Well, I guess you'll have to look at it.
So it's more like echo.
Yeah.
I like
I play heavy sports.
championship.
And sometimes I will some tech.
Or maybe when they have the auto generates that, you know, when you put on the interface, you didn't implement, do you do best? Would you like to auto implement it?
HDM.
Wow, that's all like something in the
You
middle.
mean like the
It might put it into, just to show you that it's there, it might put it in override, but it just calls the base one, so you didn't know that it's there, and it has a default. That's like the compromise.
But then usually like
Otherwise, I guess you just have to be aware of the interface you're implementing, which sounds like a good thing to do anyway.
is the one
also useful like in the end of year like a tax adjustment? Yes, as well. Yes, okay. I think that's probably still works. Yeah, I'm just wondering, is there like a plan like that? I'm not sure about that. But I mean, if it were me, I'd say, gee, I want to learn something new. Let me help. Yeah, I think, it'd be great to have it like somebody send us a this but you know, like hi everybody, I'm watching it in my old days. I can say the future. What you did before? Like which you my stuff or the one that still
Maybe
down to the 90s like that.
and it is bureau.
Okay, real science, like you can work
This guy on YouTube, someone who came here before.
Yeah.
I think he spoke to me here before, right?
Yeah, so he's the Nakamura-san, another Nakamura.
Yeah.
He's the AI guy.
So I'm not sure what will be like I can understand from your side.
You did great.
All right, thank you, Jim. All right, so let me start my session. So today I will talk about Docker and .NET Core. How many of you using .NET Core? Everybody? Kinda. How many of you using Docker? How many of you using Docker without knowing? Some people may not. So today I will talk about Docker and .NET Core, and the Docker, not only Docker specific, but I talk about the container technology. And on this Thursday, we have Agile Meetup. And in that Agile Meetup, I will talk about Kubernetes. So if you're interested in how to using the container in the big scale, enterprise scale, then please come back on this Thursday when we have Peter and Sushi as well.
Yeah.
We spoiled
Yeah.
your guys.
All right, so I have two topics today. One is using container as a user, and the other is creating the image for the container as a developer. And I don't know how much further I can go with the 30 minutes, but I do my best. All right, so for using the container, there are several key concepts you need to understand. One is the container versus image, and also the container runtime. How many of you know the word Docker? How about Moby? Not much? Okay. And I also talk about image and container. Why I have a duplicate. Container, image and container, and registry. Docker Hub or Azure Container Registry, and .NET images. All right, so let's start. So basic of the Docker. So we have computer, right? You have computer, of course. And in your computer, you have application. And so far, like last decades or several decades, we installing our software into our computer directly by using MSI, or I don't know which technology you're using for the Macintosh. And for the Linux, maybe we are using the apt or apt-get kind of stuff. So you directly installing everything on your computer. And when you get a new computer, you have to reinstall everything, right? That's what it was. But now we can use in the container based depending on what kind of application it is, though. So the container you can consider as a package of the application which automatically running anywhere, not only your computer but on the server side or even the IoT device. And to using this container, we have an image. So you can consider image as a static file. And once we launch in the image into the container, it instances its version, so it's actually running. And we also have the registry. So whenever you need some container, you are going to the registry to grab the image, download to your computer, and you're running the image, and the running image we call that container. And I will show in the example so that you get some better idea. And by the way, there are a bunch of the registry service out there at this moment, like Docker Hub, and Azure, of course, have Azure Container Registry. AWS has, GCP has, and any other third vendor also having the Docker Container Registry. All right, so what's container? So to compare with the container, quite often time we are using the virtual machine. So on your left, this is a container. So you have your infrastructure and you have your host operating system. So you can consider this infrastructure as my node PC. So I have my laptop here, and my host operating system is the Windows. And on top of Windows, I have Docker installed. So I show you. So this is my Docker is running here. And then on top of that, I can running application A, application B, application C, and each of these are containers and totally isolated from the process point of view. So I can have application A, application C, application F totally isolated each other. So that's how we are running the application in one operating system. On the other hand, the virtual machine, so this infrastructure, again, you can consider it as my computer. And on top of that, I may have the hypervisor. Actually, I enable my hypervisor here. Then we can have the virtual machines inside one computer, right? So I can running Windows inside Windows, and I can running the Linux inside Windows. But what's the difference? The difference is the virtual machine including the guest operating system as well. Meaning each virtual machine having something like mouse driver, network driver, right? Because it's considered to be operating system. On the other hand, Docker container is not operating system, it's only application running on top of the operating system, meaning it's better way to using the limited resources like my computer. My computer only have 20 gigabyte memory, and I don't want to waste it, right? So I just keep assigning the memory to the application only. I don't want to assign anything to the operating system, which I don't use. All right, so that's the main difference. All right, and another key concept you may want to understand is the container is the image, and the image are layers. So for example, let's imagine you have one very tiny Hello World console application. And to using that, you don't want to download from operating system, right? So let's say in my computer, I have 10 applications, for example. And these 10 applications, I am using the exactly same operating system, which could be Ubuntu or CentOS. So let's say I have Ubuntu application, 10 application. Now, do I need to download 10 image of Ubuntu to run in that 10 console application? Do I want? I don't, right? Because I want to reusing the Ubuntu operating system image as long as it's the same image, right? To make it happen, the container technology using the layering the image, meaning even though it looks like one container, there is a layered concept. So in this case, we have Windows Server core image, and on top of that, we have IIS, and we have .NET, we have ASP.NET, then we have web application. This meaning all the images downloaded in my computer, so I have everything. So let's say I try to adding new container, which are the different web application, but let's say I still use Windows, I still use iOS, I still use ASP.NET, then I can reusing these 4 images, and I just putting one additional layer on top of it, so that I don't have to download the exactly same image again. Does it make sense? So that's how content technology saving space and sharing the resource as much as possible. All right, then the container runtime. So container is just an image, right? And you need to have some technology to run the image to instantiate into the container, right? And to do that, we have several applications doing that. One of the de facto standard of the industry is Docker. So Docker is a Docker engine runs on various Linux, like CentOS, Debian, Fedora, I have no idea, Oracle Linux, Red Hat, and SUSE, and Ubuntu, and also Windows Server operating systems. So, which meaning, if I have one container somewhere in the registry, and I have Windows 10, if you have Linux, we both can running exactly same image, regardless which operating system we are using, which is great. So .NET Core, for example, because it's mobile, how can I say, portable, right? Portable application, meaning I can running my .NET Core application on Windows, or I can running my .NET Core application on Linux. Yes, but we don't have to think in that way because Docker container, even though I'm running Windows 10, my Docker is running Linux, meaning I can running Linux container on top of Windows so that I don't have to downloading the Windows container. I can still running the Linux container, and I'll show you what I mean later. All right, and the Docker also giving you the toolings, not only the runtime, so that you can creating your own the image as a developer. And the Docker engine enables the containerized application to run anywhere. So this is great because as a developer, if I'm creating one image, I'm pretty sure that I can run the image anywhere, everywhere, anytime. And Moby. So Moby is an open source framework created by Docker. So Docker is a software having a bunch of the capability and a bunch of the toolings. And we can think about Moby as an open source, the simplified, I don't say simplified, but let me just say simplified today, simplified version, so that anybody can take advantage of the container, the technology. And as a truth, Microsoft also using this Moby as a Docker runtime for our IoT Edge or any other technology. So if you would like to running Docker inside your application, inside your operating system or inside your data center, you can buy Docker or you can just use the Moby because this is just open source. And the difference between image and the container, the image is a static files. So if you just have image, it does nothing. It's just a file. You need runtime, and on the runtime, image becomes container, which is instantiated version, so which is actually running application. So this is like the class versus instantiated class for the .NET developer, and I hope it makes sense. And the registry. So the registry is a place to store container image. So let's say I create my image, and I want to share, right? And how I can share. For example, if I create the .NET package, I can share by using NuGet package, right? If I create something with a node, I can share with an NPM packages, right? So same idea, we have the central place, we store all the images, and we have several central repository, by the way. The one of the central repository and the public is a Docker Hub. But sometimes you want to have your own private repository for your company, right? So Azure gives you the private, and the Docker Hub also gives you the private if you pay money. So that's the registry. So you can post any Docker image into the registry. And of course, we support .NET Core images. So let me just grab this address and go into the page to show you what kind of image we are supporting. All right, so at this moment, we are supporting several types of the images. For example, .NET Core SDK. So this image, not only including .NET runtime, but also including the SDK. So once you have this image and start running, what you can do is you can create a .NET application because it has the SDK already pre-installed. But sometimes you only need runtime for the production because you don't need to write something, right? But you just need to run the application. So we also giving you the runtime images. So you can pick up whichever you need. And we also providing the images for multiple platforms. So if you go to .NET Core SDK, and we give you the versions like 2.2, 2.1, and each image has Linux AMD 64 and Linux ARM 64, Linux ARM 32, and of course we support Windows, right? So depending on where you're running your application, we are giving you the image so that you can run. All right, so that's the .NET Core images. And this is for your information. So SDK contains the SDK, and SP.NET contains the SP.NET Core runtime, something like that. So just pick up the minimum image where you need, because you don't want to have too much information into your container. You just want to have the minimum information so that you can have the small image and you can have the optimized image for that runtime. And this is a naming convention. So you have the username. So for example, if I see Microsoft one, we have where the address. So we have the username as mcr.microsoft.com. This is the username. And we have the path.net/core/, right? So that's the path. And we have the image name, like samples. This is the image name of the samples. And we have the tag. And the tag is something gives you the version number, for example. So if you want to get the SP.NET Core image, you can grab this address. But of course, you can specify version number by using the tag 2.2 or 2.1. And when 3.0 is GA, we should have 3.0 as well. And if you just omit the tag number, the Docker has the technology to having the latest by default. So if you just omit it, it's considered to be sp.net.latest. And this is just a tag. So one tag can point into one image, but multiple tags can also point into the same image. So at this moment, actually, if you do sp.net.latest, it's meaning 2.2. But maybe next year, if I keep using latest, could be 3.0, right? So for the production, I strongly recommend you to specify the tag so that you don't miss the version. And this is the tag information. So use the tag to specify which image to use. And tag has two variations. One is the multi-platform tag. So if I say I want to use, let's say, for example, if I go to SDK, if I say mcr.microsoft.com/.net/core/SDK:2.2, but which platform is this? Is it for Linux? Is this for Windows? Right? So .NET Docker is clever enough to identify which platform I'm using, because I'm running the command to get the image out from the registry, right? Then Docker already knowing which platform I'm running on, and I'm running on Linux or Windows, meaning Docker tried to grab the Linux image for me, right? So you don't have to specify which the operating system you need. But if you want to have the specific image, you can add in very specific tag, like 2.2.402-stretch, or you can say 2.1.802-stretch, right? So this is something you can specify by using tag. So we have a multi-platform tag as well as a platform-specific tag. And many times when you go to the documentation for sample, we are just giving you the multi-platform tag because that's easy. But you want to make sure which the image you're actually having locally. All right, so demo, and I have the demo script here so that I don't forget anything. So we already showing you the Docker Hub. Oh, by the way, this is Docker Hub. So we are posting all the images into the Docker Hub so anybody can have access to. And this image obviously have some sample application embedded into the image. So as soon as you download this image, you can start running the application. So let me do the Docker run. Copy and paste. All right, so first of all, it tried to find if I already downloaded the image before. If I do, it doesn't go into the internet to download, but because I didn't, it tried to go into the internet to download right now. And while it's downloading, I explain something here. So Docker has a command run, and if you run something, passing the image, it's creating the instance, which is a container. So it's actually running the image. And there's a p command. This is a port mapping. So as the image showing, sorry if I'm going back to my image here. Where is that? All right, this one. So I have a host operating system, right? And the host operating system is the one having the network card. And I have a container inside, but each container has its own networking, so that this app A can run in web application on port 80. This application B also can run in the application on port 80 inside their container. So we have give some way to accessing from external to the internal. So this command saying, I map my localhost 8000 to the container port 80. So container still running application on port 80, and I can access that container by going through my local 8000. So that's this P mean. And name is obviously this is the name of the image. And this part I will explain that later if I have enough time. All right, now it said the application now listening on HTTP 80, but this is container, right? And even though container is running on 80, because I mapped to 8000, I have to go through 8000. So let me just open my local host and go to port 8000. And the application is already up and running. Meaning this Docker image not only having .NET Core and ASP.NET Core, it also have the application embedded. So if I stop the application and coming back to try to access, obviously I cannot connect anymore because the container inside the Docker already stopped running, right? So there are several commands I want to introduce here. If I going back to the sample demo. All right, so the first command I want to introduce here is Docker images. So these are the images I downloaded from the internet right now or maybe before, like early today. And this is a sample I downloaded, right? Meaning if I run exactly same command again, it does not download from the internet anymore because I already have the cache locally, right? So it's run very quick. Then, if I see Docker PS, this is a container image. So even though I have image downloaded, there's nothing running. So there is no container running because I just killed it, right? So let me just run the application again. And I just say, open another window, and Docker PS. Now I have one image running. So this is one container is running from one image. All right. Then of course I can stop the Docker by using Docker stop and get some ID. By the way, this is very similar to the GitHub, so you don't have to paste everything. You just type enough number to identify which container I want to stop. Then it stops, right? And if I see Docker PS again, I don't see any running container anymore, right? Yep, that's it. And if I go into the definition of that container, as I said, this is a sample application running, but running on top of some images, right? Because I don't want to create from operating system. So this image is actually running on top of SP.NET 2.2 as a runtime. So I grab this image and just installing the sample application on top, right? And this image also running on top of something else, which I don't have to care because I just asking the Docker to give me this image. And if I go into the definition of this image, this also coming from somewhere, some different image. I guess it's coming from the Linux operating system. So there are multiple layers on top of each other to save the space. All right, so that's how easy to use in the Docker. And the Docker CLI basic. So this is for user, but as a user, you want to know some command. So one very basic the command is run. And as you see, if I don't have the image locally, it's actually going to the internet to fetch the image. Meaning if I do Docker run, it does three things. One, check the image local. If nothing, two, go into the internet and download. And finally, instances container to start running. So this run command is very easy shortcut to everything at once. But you just need to be careful. Sometimes this downloading like 10 gigabytes, depending on the image you are trying to run. Question?
Where does it go? Does it go to Docker Hub? Or?
Yeah, so by default, it's going to Docker Hub because by default, it's the repository trying to. But you can specify which repository you want to reaching out. Yeah. And there are several the command we want to run. So first of all, -rm remove. So as I said, there is an image, and there is an instances value of the container, right? And if I exit from the container, I mean if I close the application inside the container, because this container is operating system from the inside, it's keep running, right? But I want to close down the container image because what I'm running is application, not I'm running the operating system, right? So what I mean is if I run this one, in my mind, I'm running web application. I'm not running Debian OS or I'm not running Ubuntu OS, right? I'm just running the Windows web application. And if I close this application, what I want to do is I want to shut down the container, right? So this -rm, the parameter, make sure whenever you finish the application, it also turn down the container, and the image is just keep there. And IT is keep the shell open, meaning I can attach to the the Docker. So even though it's application, but it's also have the operating system inside. So I can log in to the bash shell from the Windows if I want. So I just, these are the kind of default combination whenever you go to any samples. Another thing I want to show you is one is -p. As I said, this is a port binding. I can bind my local port to the container port. Another important binding is the -v. This is a disk binding. So I can bind my local disk files or folder to the container. So I show you some example. This is going to be my last demo because I don't have enough time today, sorry. So if I see Docker image list, I have this SDK. And let's say I want to do something inside this SDK. What I can do is run docker run -it and rm, and I just do this. And if I start running this application, I'm go into the application, the bash. The reason why is the sample before is the starting point is a web application. This image starting point is a bash so that I log into the application, right? And if I do the ls, I see all the file system inside this container, only inside this container. But what if I want to map my files into this container? I have to do something, right? So I just exit, then going back to my desktop. So there's a one drive, my app, and let's say I want to mapping this folder. So what I can do is again running this command, but this time I say -b c colon users my name desktop my app, and I map this one to my app folder. Now if I run this one, I see my app folder, right? And if I change directory to my app folder, obviously I have nothing inside yet. But if I adding some files here, file, new, text, now I have a text, right? So why this is important? As I said, I have .NET inside. This is .NET SDK container, right? So what I can do, .NET new, what application you want to create? Maybe just console. Easier. So, yeah, I don't have enough time to do that. And if I do that, I can say .NET restore and .NET run. And by default, it's showing the hello world because the program file I have here has the console write line hello world. Then automatically, I have already compiled assembly in my Windows file, meaning I don't have to download in .NET Core 3. I just download in .NET Core 3 container. I just map my folder, do everything inside the container, even compile, then automatically the DLL file is appearing in my Windows system, right? So this is how we can interact from local system to Windows container. And this is Windows, right? My computer is Windows 10, but I'm running Windows Docker for Linux. No, Linux container for Windows, I don't know. So I have a Windows Docker running Linux container. So if I see my Docker, and I hope you can see that switch to Windows container, meaning at this moment, even though this is Windows 10, this is Docker, this Docker running Linux container. If I switch to Windows container, now this Docker start running Windows container, right? And if I switch, I don't do that right now, but if I switch, and if I run exactly same command, what happens? This command downloading Windows image, not Linux image, because this is a multi-platform tag, and this even have the latest, right? Something like that, right? So this is how Docker is working. And if you need any application, like if you want to try SQL, go to download the SQL image. If you need to try Node, go to download Node. If you need to try to Python, go there to grab the Python image. You don't have to install anything to your local computer. All right. So that's it for my half of the presentation, and I skip the others. And of course, I have a development section for you guys so that you can develop a .NET Core application, and you want to package your application, right? The reason is because I was creating my application, right? So let's just rerun. And once I logged in, see my app, and because I'm mapping my drive here, I still can see the information, right? But what if I do not mapping my drive here? Image is a read-only, meaning if I run this image, and if I do make directory, my app, and I have my app folder, right? And if I exit, and if I rerun, all of a sudden my work will be gone. Because image is read-only static file, and every time we instantiate, we spin up the new image. And of course we can do the stop of the container, and we can pause, or we can restart or start, which keeps the image as is. But basically, image is read-only, meaning if you develop something, you want to create your new own image so that you can distribute to others. right? So in my the later half section, I will explain how you can create your own application and how you can create your own image and how you can push in the image to the registry back so that my application is now on the public, the internet, so that anybody can download it, right? So if you're interested in that section, please come in back next month. I try to continue my session next month. All right, so that's it for my session. Do you have any question? No?
When are the Windows containers going to run on Linux?
So the question is, can we run in the Windows container on Linux? The answer is no.
I said when.
When? Answer is, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if you want to run maybe you won't, I don't know. Yeah, and as I said, on this Thursday, I will explain about the Azure Kubernetes service. The Kubernetes service is a container orchestrator, meaning this small container application, you may not want to put everything into one. Maybe you have the one program in one container, database in the separate container, the caching system in the another container. Then you have to place in those containers, mapping each other from the networking, porting, and how to replicate, how to scale out, how to scale down, right? So Kubernetes is a service you can orchestrate these containers. And Azure Kubernetes service is a managed Kubernetes service which Azure is offering. And I believe some of you do not know what I'm talking about. It's not like my English is bad, but this is a new concept maybe for some of you. So if you're interested in, please come in on this Thursday so that I can explain what is Kubernetes and what is Azure Kubernetes service means. All right, thank you for coming. And let me stop my broadcasting here. So goodbye, YouTube.